everyone. Welcome back to our English Learning Podcast. I hope you're all doing well and ready for another fun and exciting episode. Today, we're going to talk about something I'm sure many of you can relate to, being forgetful. Yes, that's right. We all forget things sometimes, don't we? But what if you were so forgetful that every day felt like an adventure? Well, let me introduce you to Mr. Forgetful. He's the main character of our story today. Are you ready? Let's get started. Mr. Forgetful is a nice man, but there's one thing about him that makes his life a little tricky. He forgets almost everything. Let me tell you about his typical morning. Mr. Forgetful wakes up early as usual. He's very proud of himself for setting the alarm the night before. But wait! He looks around his bedroom and realizes something is missing. What do you think it is? Can you guess? Yes, that's right. He's forgotten to put his alarm clock on the nightstand, so he can't even see it. He put it in the kitchen last night when he was making a snack. Now, Mr. Forgetful is running around the house, trying to remember where he left his alarm clock. He finally finds it in the kitchen next to a half-eaten sandwich. Oh no, he says. I forgot to finish my sandwich. Do you ever forget where you put things? Maybe your keys or your phone. It can be so frustrating, can it? After finding his alarm clock, Mr. Forgetful decides it's time for breakfast. He goes to the fridge, opens the door, and stands there thinking, what was I going to get? He wonders. Was it milk? Was it eggs? He scratches his head and tries to remember. Finally, he grabs a carton of milk and a loaf of bread. This should do, he says. Mr. Forgetful pours the milk into a bowl and starts to eat the bread. But something doesn't seem right. Do you know what he forgot? Can you guess? Yes, he forgot the cereal. He's eating a bowl of plain milk and a slice of bread. How silly is that? Have you ever made a mistake like this? Maybe you poured juice into your cereal instead of milk, or put salt in your coffee instead of sugar. These little mistakes can be so funny when you think about them later. After his unusual breakfast, Mr. Forgetful needs to get dressed for work. He puts on his shirt, his pants, and his jacket. But when he looks down, he realizes something is wrong. What do you think it is this time? That's right. He's forgotten his shoes. He's still wearing his fluffy bunny slippers. Oh no, he says again. Where did I leave my shoes? He looks under the bed, in the closet, even in the bathroom. But they're nowhere to be found. Mr. Forgetful is in a panic. He needs to leave for work soon, but he can't go out in his bunny slippers, can he? Or maybe he can. What do you think? Would you wear bunny slippers to work? It would be funny, but probably not the best idea. Finally, Mr. Forgetful remembers that he left his shoes in the garden the night before. Why? Well, he was watering the plants and decided to take off his shoes to feel the grass under his feet. But of course, he forgot to bring them back inside. With his shoes finally on his feet, Mr. Forgetful grabs his bag and heads out the door. But just as he's about to leave, he remembers something important. Oh no, I forgot to lock the door. So he goes back, locks the door, and starts walking to the bus stop. Now, here's a question for you. Have you ever forgotten something important before leaving the house? Maybe you forgot to turn off the lights or lock the door, just like Mr. Forgetful. Or maybe you've forgotten your keys and had to go back to get them. It happens to the best of us, doesn't it? As Mr. Forgetful walks to the bus stop, he suddenly realizes something else. Where's my bag? He asks himself. Oh no, he's forgotten his bag on the kitchen table. So he runs back home, grabs the bag, and hurries to the bus stop. But when he gets there, What do you think happens? Yes, you guessed it. He just missed the bus. Poor Mr. Forgetful. Finally, Mr. Forgetful arrives at his office, a little out of breath, but happy to be at work. He sits at his desk, ready to start his day. But when he opens his bag, guess what? He's forgotten his laptop. He left it at home, right next to where his bag was. Can you believe it? What would you do if you forgot something important for work or school? Would you go back home to get it, or try to manage without it? Mr. Forgetful decides to call his neighbor, Mrs. Helpful. She's always there to lend a hand. Hello, Mrs. Helpful. It's me, Mr. Forgetful. I've done it again. Could you please bring my laptop to the office? Mrs. Helpful laughs and says, Of course, Mr. Forgetful. I'll be there in a few minutes. While waiting, Mr. Forgetful decides to make himself a cup of coffee, but oh no, he accidentally put sugar in the salt shaker and salt in the sugar bowl. When he takes a sip of his coffee, his face turns red and he spits it out. Yuck, what is this? He says. Have you ever had a kitchen disaster like this? Maybe you put the wrong ingredients in your recipe or burned your toast. It's not fun at the moment, but it can be funny later, don't you think? Mrs. Helpful finally arrives with Mr. Forgetful's laptop. He thanks her and sits down to start his work. But just as he's about to type, he realizes he's missing something again. Can you guess what it is this time? Yes, his pen. He needs it to write some notes, but it's nowhere to be found. He searches his desk, his drawers, even his pockets, but the pen has vanished. Mr. Forgetful sighs and decides to borrow a pen from his colleague. But as he's walking to his colleague's desk, he feels something behind his ear. What do you think it is? Yes, it's his pen! He had it behind his ear the whole time. He laughs at himself and says, Oh, Mr. Forgetful, when will you learn? So that's the story of Mr. Forgetful and his funny forgetful day. Even though he forgets a lot of things, he always finds a way to solve his problems, and he never gives up. We can all learn something from Mr. Forgetful, can't we? It's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to forget things sometimes. The important thing is to keep going, to laugh at yourself, and to ask for help when you need it. Before we end today's episode, I have a question for you. What's the funniest thing you've ever forgotten? Maybe it was something silly, like forgetting your glasses when they were on your head, or something more serious, like forgetting an important appointment. Share your stories with me, and let's have a good laugh together. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and that you learned something new. Remember, it's okay to be a little forgetful as long as you keep a positive attitude and don't let it ruin your day. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Keep practicing your English and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.